Right. Yeah. You all right? Yeah. It's all right.
Right, good evening everybody. We can start again now. Welcome to this meeting of Middlesbrough Council. We'll start off straight away. Apologies for absence.
We have apologies from councillors Garvey, High, Hill, Jones, Lewis, Purvis, Rostron, Thompson, Jeanette Walker and Wright.
Anybody else while we're on? No? Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Can't see any hands up very well. No? Right. Right, minutes of previous meetings. We've got two. We've got the 26th of January, which was an ordinary council meeting, and we've got the budget council meeting, which was the 23rd of February. Can we have somebody who will receive these as a correct record? Can we do the two together? We can, can't we? Yes.
Move it, Chair.
Councillor Lawson for both of them. Okay. Right, announcements and communications. There wasn't going to be any announcements and communications, but I've had that many phone calls and people talking to me about the executive reports. I feel, and I know the Mayor's going to speak on this later, but I feel that before the Mayor gets up and says his piece, I need really to enlighten people as to what I've been doing, right? So when I discovered there were no reports on the agenda for this meeting, I spoke with the monitoring officer. There's no discussion had been held between either myself or Councillor Bell, the Vice Chair. The reply was, we are looking at making changes. So I asked who she meant by we, and she replied, officers. So when I asked why the Vice Chair and the Chair hadn't been invited, didn't really get an answer. It was just more or less the usual thing that probably we've been forgotten about. Now the way it works out, any decisions or changes regarding council meetings should come to full council via the Constitution Committee to be voted on. These aren't decisions that can be made by officers, they have to be made by us. The information that we get from some of these executive reports could have a bearing on what we do as councillors, as it informs us what is actually happening in various areas. When you read it, you'll find that sometimes there's been a shop closed down in, say, North Ormsby because they've been selling illegal tobacco. There's things where hot food takeaways have been closed down because of mice infestations. There's all kinds of things. As councillors, we're elected to our own wards, but we also have a legal part of us where we have to look after the town as well. And to read these reports, this, to me, it gives me an inkling of what's happening in other places, and we haven't been getting these reports. So, if we don't get these reports, we're going to have to ask Henry Craney over there from the Gazette if she'll tell us what's happening, because quite often you pick the Gazette up and you'll find something's in the Gazette that we don't know about. Right. I've said my piece, so we'll carry on with the meeting. Questions from members of the public, if any? There are none. Members' statement and report. Andy, over to you.
Sorry.
Yeah, yes.
All right.
Oh, sorry, before anybody speaks, will they please use the microphone, because it is difficult for some of the people amongst us who are a bit hard of hearing. I'm not looking at you, honest.
Hello everyone, good evening, hi. I'm feeling really positive tonight, and I've had a really great week meeting people all over town, potential investors, people doing great community work. There is fantastic stuff going on, and I wasn't around before 2019, but I tell you what, I'm really convinced that there wasn't as much positivity and energy and optimism going on across Middlesbrough. It's a really exciting time to be involved. Some of the things that I've done this week, for example, I went to the Riverside Stadium. I met rugby legend, I know people follow rugby, by the way, a brilliant sport if you try and get into it once you understand it a little bit. It is an incredible sport, and the Rugby League World Cup is coming to Middlesbrough. It's going to host a great game. Rugby League and Rugby Union legend Jason Robinson was there, one of my heroes. I got to meet him. Borough Captain Johnny Howson was there to promote it. 200 days away, 6 months away. We should all please play a role in promoting this, make sure the stadium's full, because the eyes of the world, or anybody remotely interested in rugby, which is, you know, probably up to 1 billion people across the globe, are going to be watching that World Cup. So we've really got a chance to show Middlesbrough's passion and pride. And it would be fantastic, wouldn't it? To inspire more kids to play other sports. Not at the expense of football, but rugby as well. Okay? There are 2 big, beautiful, prosperity-inducing office blocks in the middle of construction. They're going to be finished by the end of the year. We've got the building over across the way there, beyond Melrose House, we're on the site of former Melrose House across the pond, and then we've got Boho X all across the railway lines. And what's fantastic about this, of course, is that unlike other office buildings we've built, both of those are being built with tenants ready to go, bringing jobs, hope, and most importantly, as retail declines, bringing that energy back into the centre of the town. Other great stuff that I probably don't need to remind you about, but I'm going to talk about, is after years of dereliction in Gresham, after years of desperation and a failing of hope, spiralling crime, disgusting living conditions, we've got optimism there, and 13 are back on site building those new homes. And we've got volunteer groups all over town in Gresham cleaning the alleys, making them beautiful. And thank you, by the way, to all the councillors who've been involved in making that happen. We have got new houses over the border, opposite the Captain Cup pub. They are going up so fast. The first 60 odd are going to be finished within 2 months. Who would have thought that? How fast has that happened? Despite COVID, despite the colossal inflation in the building sector and all of the barriers, we're making great things happen. Great homes for great people in a great town. Boho X, I talked about that. I mentioned that. We've got a tenant lined up. It's not legally signed, but heads of terms were signed quite some time ago. And we're all extremely confident that this big, booming, prosperous company is going to rent the whole building from us. They should sign the lease very soon. And as soon as they sign, we're ready to launch and announce the next building. I think it'll be called Boho 11. So there's more great stuff happening, more jobs, more energy, more investment, more activity in the central Middlesbrough. I stress again, just as retail declines and people have less reason to come into town, we're going to be bringing them into town to work, to live, and for leisure. I was in Captain Cook Square earlier. I went to what's going to be Lane 7 stroke Level X, the former TJ Hughes unit. Massive indoor go-karting track on the top floor. Banked track. All sorts of gaming, indoor golf, indoor bowling, big screen entertainment, live music, live comedy, and loads of other things going around. In Captain Cook Square, we are running out of space. We have more interest from investors than we have space to let. It's a really exciting problem. It's a challenge for us because the demand is so high. Optimism is sky high. I want to talk about the reports, the exec reports. Quite rightly, people want to know what's going on. Of course they do know what's going on, they can find out anyway. All you have to do is email me, or Councillor Coop, or Councillor Smiles, or the officer, or go use the scrutiny committee, or use any of the other means. But if someone really wants to ask at a council meeting, that's absolutely fine with me. But do you know what we had? We had a system that was probably fine decades ago. But for the modern era, these days, it was absolutely rubbish. And it was being abused for political reasons. And you know what we want to do? We want to be more transparent. We want to give the public more than the politicians, by the way. It's important that the politicians get transparency, but not as much as the public get transparency. And what's happened over decades is officers have spent valuable time, often working into the night, writing very long, detailed reports that a faceless politician over the decades stands up and reads out word by word. Now that is meaningless to the public, it's largely meaningless to the politicians, and it really doesn't do our council justice. So I've been talking with senior officers and exec members, and we're coming up with a much better way of doing it. We're going to have a system online where any of you, anyone in the public, any of us can ask questions and they will get an answer within 10 days. Hopefully get an answer within 10 minutes, but up to 10 days. Any question you want that's sensible and relevant. But what's particularly exciting is what I want to do is I want to get exec members to stand up and to speak from the heart about what they're passionate about and what they think the public really needs to know about. Rather than something that an officer's written, as has always happened in the past, and as I say again, a faceless politician has sat there and read out 500 words that mean almost nothing to them and certainly nothing to the public. We want executive members to deliver what's really important, what's really going on. And with the Chair's permission, tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask, for example, Councillor Smiles, Deputy Mayor, is going to give a very brief overview of what she thinks is really important in children's services. And that comes from the heart, not from the pen of somebody else. That comes from the exec member. Because if you're going to ask questions and challenge, what you need to do is hear from the exec member. That's so important. And similarly, Councillor Tony Grange is going to stand up and give us a little bit of overview of something he's really passionate about. He's going to talk about issues of crime and issues of safety and working with young people and how we can do a much better job. And the value of that coming from Tony Grange is infinitely better than, albeit an expert, but an officer writing a report that somebody else reads out. And this situation is going to evolve over time, it's going to be infinitely better, and we'll see how the public judge this. You know what, I care a little bit what politicians think, but I care most of all what the public think. That's who we are here for, not each other. The last thing I want to say is that it's coming up to, it's not far off, 3 years since the election. We had 2 years of COVID. It's been a really strange term of office for all of us, hasn't it? Different challenges, different problems, and it's probably for most of us not been the most pleasant of eras. But nonetheless, we've had some really positive developments from Middlesbrough. I am so full of enthusiasm, energy and optimism for the future of Middlesbrough. And I think what a regime change. And do you know what I think? I think the change of regime has played a role in this new energy and this new optimism. Changing things that are stale, changing things that have been the same way forever, whether it's Exec Reports or whether it's the people in power, changing things is often necessary to bring about a good, positive start. And we've got a really good, positive start. And what I want to do is thank every councillor who does positive stuff in their ward. And I want to thank all of the people who've been recently elected and played a part in a small way, in a big way, in the future or in the past, in this exec team offering advice and input and the achievements that were made and the great things we're about to do. So thank you to everyone who's played a role. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we open it up to any questions, can we just, I think Councillor Uddin, you have a question relating to executive reports for the Mayor. Would you like to say that now, to speak down on that, and then we'll get that out of the way for later on, or do you want to keep it until it's time?
Right, that's now here if you want to. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Well, first of all, before that, can I just ask a simple question on Mr. Mayor's statement, earlier on? Yeah? I know it's very positive, obviously, we're doing, all of us doing a fantastic job. In terms of your warehouse house and the Boho X, fantastic work, obviously, yeah, what's going on. Can I just ask, on the Central Square, the Central Square buildings, what were built over the years, what's happening with them? Are they all occupied at this point? They're all, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Is that the question?
Next question.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So that's what I want to know first, yeah. The second thing was the question here, same again on this, as the Chair mentioned kindly, the report, Exec Reports. Well, obviously the Exec Report, you mentioned as well yourselves that you're going to move it or do it differently. But the thing is, if you do it though, as the Chair stated earlier on, it has to be discussed here. And obviously it's not been in the in the report for the council the last 3-4 months. So we have to wonder, you know, what's happening. So that's why I raised this question today. Is that okay to ask and raise? Yeah? What I said, I noticed that there have been no exec members report for the council meeting. In fact, since November 21, none has been provided. I understand that the council staff are working tirelessly to do their best for our town. But lack of exec report undermines all the hard work they are doing. In fact, not only the one scrutiny panel, it's every panel is obviously progressing, doing very good. I'm involved with the 3 and I know 3 of them doing really well, and staff and the councillors and everybody working so hard. And who knows all about it? It was all the particular members on that project, on that scrutiny panel of the committee. I don't think everybody else knows. As you said, obviously, if you know or you ask or you email, then you know. But not many people would. Not everybody does that, obviously. Yeah? So what I was saying here, rather than just leave it behind and undermine all the hard work going on, can we in future have the executive members report? And which is obviously every councillor needs to know that, as well as the members of the public. And I think the only way that people would know that the reports are there, work is going on, and obviously fantastic work and work, obviously we have to, comment that, yeah? So thank you very much. I just kind of request that, if you do the report as we did it traditionally. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. 2 points there, I guess, and both very sensible, very genuine. Thank you for that. Take them seriously. The first thing is Centre Square. The first building 1, the one nearest to us, the one that was actually, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to, is basically, 20 million quid. The council were going to spend 20 million quid. Politicians voted to spend 20 million quid on an office for themselves. And the staff, of course, but for themselves. I mean, the top floor's got a massive balcony. I don't know whether, was that meant to be the Labour Mayor's office, his personal balcony with a hot tub? I've no idea. But what's outrageous is that the most expensive office building in Teesside was built for the council. How wrong is that? I was so pleased when I was elected to shake that up and say, no, put the kibosh on it. No. If we get loads of buildings let and we're doing a fantastic job for the town, let's get a nice office. But let's not have the most expensive office in Teesside. That's morally repugnant. It's completely inappropriate. And especially when the whole plan to rent those offices had fallen flat on its face. So what we did was, we offered it out for rent. I know Tony Parkinson sat beside me, spoke to potential tenants. I spoke to potential tenants. Other staff did. And we got it let. We got the building fully let. So I'm really pleased that that's fully let. The other building across the way, the blue one, the blue-green one, which is building 2, the top floor is let to XPS Pension Fund, and they're growing, creating jobs, which is brilliant. The second floor is let to GB Bank, and they're about to start training, which is fantastic news. And the ground floor is mainly let, nearly all let, to chambers of barristers. I don't know whether the documents have been signed, but terms have been agreed. So that's fantastic news. The second part of your question was about the Exec Reports. I totally agree that what we should do as people who are elected and trusted by the public is be open and honest and accessible to each other, but mainly to the public. Our responsibility, please remember, is mainly to the public rather than each other, but we should be accessible to each other. And I think reports are really important, Councillor. I really agree with you there. However, the way they've been done over decades, and I don't mean necessarily just last week or just 2 years ago, for decades, is that officers slave over long hours to produce detailed reports that are read out by somebody who reads it out like they're reading, I don't know, a cookery list, a list of ingredients or something. And it doesn't mean as much as it should do to the person who's asking the question or the person who's reading it, and certainly not to the public. We need to have reports that come from the heart, come from experience, and resonate with the public. So what we're going to do from now on, as I say, we'll try tonight, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Smiles, is going to give an overview of the stuff that she thinks is important, which is great, and the Head of Children's Services may come up with a slightly different list. But we should talk here politician to politician, shouldn't we? Not politician to officer via a politician. And I think that's really important, and I think everyone will agree with that. So I think tonight we'll see how it goes. We're going to be refining this, but to reassure and clarify everyone in the room, this isn't something that I cooked up, isn't something that another exec member cooked up. We didn't stop doing reports. Over several conversations with officers, we shared a view that the process wasn't working, it was putting pressure on some of the teams of staff, and it wasn't imparting the right information that politicians and the public need. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Andy. Before we go into anything else, we'll open it up to questions again about the executive reports. And I see Councillor Hobson has her hand up. Councillor Hobson.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Right, I'm really concerned about these executive reports. It's costing the residents about £70,000 for executives, roughly about £70,000. I have no idea what Councillor Grange is doing. I have no idea what Councillor Mason's doing, none whatsoever. So without those reports, I have no idea whether they're, and I'm sure that they're not, whether they're just sitting on the backside and taking the money, or whether they're actually doing something for the money. This is very important, and I can understand what you're saying, Mr. Mayor Preston, that these reports have been done in the same way for a long, long time. And yes, maybe they should be changed, but we should not, and I'll say it again, we should not be taking something away before something else is put in their place, and before that is agreed by all of the councillors here. Thank you.
Mr. Ansley.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I share your concern. Listen, this executive, while I've been elected, just for clarity, has cost much less than before I was elected. The other thing I want to make clear is it's really important that the public gets value for money from the executive. If anybody in here thinks the public gets value for money, last year, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, by someone turning up and reading stuff out, they're deluded, because that's not value for money. What is value for money is an exec member standing up and giving an honest, heartfelt account of what they are doing. And that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. We've had years of faceless politicians reading out something that somebody else has written, and the public gets zero value from that. And that's going to change. Just like a load of other stuff has changed, and by the way, there are more changes to come, stuff is going to change. We're going to shake it up, we're going to give the public value for money, we're going to be transparent and open. And by the way, openness and transparency towards the public, primarily, politicians also. And answer to Councillor Hobson, you're dead right, you do need to know what I do or what Councillor Mason does. Of course, you can always email them or telephone them or talk to them. Well, people say no, but that's the truth. And actually, a report that somebody else has written, and you all know this is true, and I know you're shaking your head because that's what you do. You all know this is true. A report that somebody else has written, that somebody reads out, isn't that meaningful and is arguably pointless, and is certainly a waste of an officer's time. And I'm for getting value for money, enabling staff, freeing up their time, and allowing executive members to give Councillor Hobson the reports and information she would like and be accessible to her. Thank you.
Councillor McTeague.
Is this switched on? Is this switched on?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Do I have to stand up or can I sit down? Do I have to stand up or can I sit down?
No, you can sit down. Only a bit higher up.
Thank you,
That's
Chair.
it, that's it.
I sent an email out to all councillors. I don't know whether they had a chance to read it, but certainly the press wanted, so I'll repeat it. Those
those of you who've been here quite some time, like myself, will remember Councillor Hazel Pearson. And I can remember her standing up there in front of Ray Mallon and saying, these reports are nothing more than all our yesterday's. Because what we were reading had already happened. It was in the press, or we'd had press releases sent to us. And in fact, sometimes I was stopped by residents asking me something that was in the Gazette that I hadn't seen. So what we were getting was past tense. What I would like to see is, and I'd like to see the reports written by the executive councillors, because, I'll be blunt, if they're not capable of writing the report, they shouldn't be there, Mr. Preston. Like you say, officers shouldn't be wasting their time sending out reams and reams, because we've seen executive officers here put on the spot, executive council put on the spot, people asking them questions and they can't answer because they haven't written the report and haven't read it thoroughly. So I'd like to see reports whereby we are told what the executive councils and yourself and senior officers are thinking of doing, and inviting whoever wants to contribute and ask questions and say, what about this, what about that, what about the other? I know that I put a suggestion forward, it wasn't in any of the exec magazine papers or whatever reports, and that was we weren't recycling enough, we were way down the list, and it was taken on board. But this is the sort of thing that executive councils should be thinking of themselves. We should not be reading something that they should not be reading out something that somebody else has written for them, so I do welcome that. And they won't be as long as what we have at the moment. If it's costing that amount of money, let's reduce it. It's long overdue that it's changed. Unfortunately, it's donkey's years since Hazel Pearson asked for it to be changed. Nothing was done then. I really would like to see something done now about it. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to respond to that? No, thanks. Councillor Rathbell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on the point of executive reports, I actually do agree with you on this one, Mayor Preston. It would be better to hear from people telling you what they've been doing from the heart. And we can all sit here and make reasons and excuses as to why there's been nothing since November. But rather than debate that for the next 40 minutes, next half hour, it'd be great if the Chair used his discretion and we actually got on with the job and trialled it, and all of the exec members provide people with an update of what they've been doing since November and answer questions on it. It would be a lot simpler and it would be a lot less chewy. And if it was rubbish, it didn't work, scrap it, go back to the drawing board. But I think as the exec members have took the effort to turn up tonight, they've all been working hard. Members have quite obviously got questions. I know I've got questions about environmental issues from my ward. It'd be great to try it properly now, rather than just a select few. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
I think it's an interesting idea. Clearly, if I or David Coop, Councillor Coop, were to give an overview of what they've been doing for the last 3 or 4 months, that conversation or that monologue should take hours, and it absolutely couldn't be condensed into 2 or 3 minutes. So the idea of actually me or Councillor Mason standing up and describing everything they've been doing and thinking in the last 3 months is pretty uncertain. By the way, this has never ever happened before. If people really want to go down this route, I'm up for it, but we need to plan it and spec it out and show what would be expected and how it would work and make sure we do it properly. What I'm talking about, to be crystal clear, is changing the way we do it, making executive members speak from the heart instead of reading stuff out, which is what's happened for years and years, and that's a fantastic process, and it will allow people to ask real questions about real words. I suspect some of the people here don't want that, but let's see. And we tried it tonight, and with the Chair's permission, we asked a couple of the exec members, and by the way, it was normally only a couple of exec members at a time that would have an exec report. We get a couple of exec members to give an overview of what they're thinking, what they're working on, and what they see as the interesting things. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Story?
said a hell of a lot of things before he started talking about the Exec Reports, and I was quite keen to remind the Mayor about all of the litany of things he listed that were actually started by Labour and he's completing on our work. Centre Square, for example. I would be careful talking about Paul Wax too much, Mr Mayor, because there's a meeting of Corporate Affairs and Audit next week, and the papers are available on the Council's website. Lots of very interesting information there about transparency and openness, which you might do well to avail yourself of in the meantime. You might want to be a bit more careful talking about that, bearing in mind you wasted £600,000 of taxpayers' money on a tower block that was never going to be built. You talk about value for money, you wasted £20,000 on antibody tests that couldn't be used. You wasted £145,000 for winter gardens which will never be built in the town centre. So let's not talk about value for money coming out of your mouth, because frankly you're not in a position to discuss that. Let's talk about accountability. Let's use that word, because I don't hear anyone say that yet. Accountability is really important in politics, really important in local democracy, and we don't have that if we can't ask questions to executive members. And we can't ask questions unless we see something written in front of us. What we've heard tonight is that executive members are going to talk off the top of their heads about what they feel and how their heart feels about what they're doing in their department. I don't want that. I want to know what's happening. I want detail, I want information, I want to be able to scrutinise that. I want to be able to ask a question in a public forum like this, on YouTube, so that people can see what we're doing. The Mayor talks about who we're responsible to. We are responsible to the public, and that's really important. And how we prove that responsibility to the public is by asking questions on their behalf that relate to these reports. These reports matter. And they are not reports, and they never have been, and the people of this town should hear this, they never ever have been reports that were written out like a script for somebody to read. Never ever. Not under the last council, not under the one before that. It has never happened like that. They were questions and they were answered. That's how it went. And you shouldn't have said that, because that's misleading. So let's make sure we people know what the Exec Reports were. They were excellent. They were very well written, whether they're independent executive members or Labour. They were well written. It was hard work by councillors, and you came remarkably close to criticising officers for the hard work that they put in putting those reports together, because it's hard work and it matters. Those reports had information, as the Chair quite rightly says, across the town, in ward level and in strategic level. Lots of really interesting stuff. We've heard tonight from Councillor Rathmell that it would be simpler if we just let people talk off the top of their heads about their brief. Well, it might be simpler, but we have a constitution, we have rules, we're supposed to abide by those things, and it's important that we do, because we have to be held to a higher standard. We are councillors. There are rules here for a reason. We are not here to simply hear off the top of the head from people who have prepared nothing. The Mayor said about how the reports need to be sensible and relevant, and just sensible and relevant things. Who decides that? It should be a full report that people can have a read of, that they can understand. And the final thing that's really important on this is it's not in your gift to stand up tonight and tell us that you want it to run differently in this meeting. You cannot tell this council that you want executive reports to go differently tonight from they've ever been done, and that's what we're going to do. You can't do it. It has to go through the Constitution Committee, and it has to come to this full council, and it has to be agreed by us. There has to be proper consultation with elected members, and you haven't done that. You just want to ignore the rules, and you can't. It's not one rule for you and one rule for everybody else. This needs to be done properly, and if people want to drop exec reports, and that goes through Constitution, and it comes here, then that will be decided. But it shouldn't be for you to stand up and change everything off the top of your head, because it's not acceptable. Executive reports are not a bad thing. Maybe they're not perfect. Maybe they're not the most perfect system of doing things. But if we have a full report in front of us, like Councillor Hobson says, if we have that information and we can avail ourselves of that, and we can ask questions, it's very important. And if that puts executive members under pressure, and if they have to think on their feet, that's part of being a politician. That is part of their job. That's what we're here to do. They should be able to do that. And if they can't, then they shouldn't be in post. And you should replace them with someone who can do the job. And if you can't do that, then you need to think about how you've behaved over the last 3 years, and think about why people don't want to sit on your executive who can do a decent job.
How many minutes are we allowed? Can you please watch that?
Twice about vote for it, I don't think. I don't think there's a rule for that.
Chair, point of order, please. Right of reply, Councillor Story mentioned me.
Sorry, John, I can't hear you.
Excuse me.
Point of order, please. Councillor Story mentioned me. He referred to the Constitution as well, and it's paragraph 101. I'm entitled to respond when a councillor mentions me.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. It was just on regards to Councillor Story. He referenced the Constitution, and I was saying ignore the Constitution. What I was saying is something totally different. We're all here now, so rather than just keep going on about the same issue, let each exec member give highlights of what they've done. If you've got a question, throw it at them. The Mayor pointed out that it would be several hours long. There's no need for it to be several hours long. We don't even know what they've done the last 4 weeks. So let's go with it.
Yes, please. Hi, thank you. Listen, Matthew's story, you're obviously very agitated. I think you're misrepresenting, misunderstanding and misinforming people here. Well, it's okay to shake your head, but categorically, everything I've said tonight has been done, has been considered with the absolute guidance of the most senior officers. So please don't suggest to people in here or anywhere that I'm writing roughshod the rules, because that's really dishonest. And to be honest, I think I know why you're agitated. I think it's because you want power. You're just angry, you're frustrated. I think it's true. The biggest single issue is that you are upset because you have lost it. You have lost your control over power and the positions and the income. And I can't get my head around it, but I do observe it. It's very depressing. Out.
It is a business meeting, Harry.
Sorry, so.
It is a business meeting.
Not one per person.
Not one per person.
Well, okay, so what I want to do is I want to talk about business. Let's talk about business. Obviously, there was a very long personal attack there. So what I will do is, rather than...
Well, I'm making the point, Councillor.
Yeah, why did you stop him making the question?
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll calm it down, we'll calm it all down, and I'll talk about boatworks.
Members need to be mindful.
Okay, so I'll talk about boatworks and we'll all calm it down.
We'll just carry on with the questions.
No, I have a right to reply. I do have a right to reply. So boatworks is genuinely the best office building. We did change the plans. We changed the plans in the middle of COVID. We changed the plans when the world was telling me that there would be no more demand for office buildings anywhere. And you know what? We went from a 30 million quid project to a 20 million. And yes, we had some costs, but we put 10 million in the bank for other stuff to do for Middlesbrough. So unlike Matthew and his colleagues, who built the most expensive office building in Teesside for themselves, we are building office buildings for businesses, for jobs, and for a future. And I will stand and take any questions. It might be the scrutiny. And by the way, one of the issues with the Exec Reports is that they are abused for political purposes. Just like when Labour ran the scrutiny committee. What happened? There was mayhem. It wasn't used for scrutiny or information or constructive challenge. It was used to bash other politicians for self-gratification and desperate attempts for power.
One point clarification, very brief, on what the Mayor said.
Very quick.
Could the Mayor just clarify, just in public again, just one more time, just for the record, could you clarify that COVID-19 categorically was the reason that the designs for BOX changed from a tower block to a different design? Could you just clarify for me that that is categorically the case, please?
What I'll clarify for you is the change in design of anything, whether it's a garage at home, or a big office building, or a new school, can be influenced by a range of factors. And the biggest single factor pervading the global financial and economic and social system at that point was COVID, and that was influencing every single decision. And loads of factors went in. And the biggest single one for me behind that was the potential to save 10 million as a war chest as we entered into what looked like at that time a significant economic depression that would have floored every town and city in England, and building up a war chest was so important. So lots of reasons, Mr. Story, and I will stand and talk... Mr. Story, I will stand and debate it with you, or someone from the public, or someone on telly, all day, every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, we're getting out of context for this now. We've got far too many people wishing to speak. We'll go with Councillor Cook, then we'll go with Councillor Rooney, Councillor Mawson, and Councillor Rathmell, and then we'll change the
It's
subject.
already on the board.
I'm coming in.
Sorry, not Councillor Rathbone, Councillor Branson. Right, so Councillor Cook first, followed by Councillor Rooney. And please, make it brief.
You know what I always do. Right, so I would actually like to point out one of the other reasons that exec reports are important is to make sure that we appreciate the work being done in communities. And actually, I think for probably one of the first time, I actually agree with Councillor Rathbone that all the exec members should tonight get up and give that heartfelt report, because they should all be capable of it. If I was to maybe mention some of the environment changes that have been made, Faverdale Close in my ward has got bins, and I would like to say a massive thank you to Phil Shaw. The Complete Clean is coming, which will change fundamentally the way we work with alleyways. I would like to thank Peter Salt for this. We've had faster action on fly tipping, thanks to Josh Smith and the flying squad. And lastly, I would like to thank Letitia House, the staff and the residents for their supporting every single monthly new portal pig. And they are a community that have always been sort of penalised and assumed that they don't contribute, but they do contribute. And it's important that we recognise things like that, whether it's an exec report, verbally or written. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook.
Just very quickly, I don't agree with everything that Councillor Chris Cook says, but I have to say that I think he's a brilliant councillor. I think he does great work. I saw him on Sunday. Letitia House we've got various initiatives and projects that work with people who don't have a home, and there are various levels of intervention. Letitia House is the most drastic. It literally has teams of people who go out in the middle of the night scooping people off the streets and giving them a place to stay and get clean. It does incredible work. And I had the privilege to go down on Sunday and join some of the residents and had some pizza and coffee with them after. And it was fantastic. But Chris Cook was there, and I know Chris doesn't publicise it. You deserve a lot of credit for what you do. Exec reports are really important, I agree. It's the format of the reports and the delivery that I think we might be disagreeing on. We're losing sight. If anybody thinks that myself or the senior staff or the exec team don't want exec reports, please change your view, because that's not accurate. We all believe they're important, but there's a better way to do them. Councils have to change and shift and move. But Councillor Cook, well done, and thank you for everything you do down in your ward.
Councillor Rooney.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points. The Mayor mentioned some of the great work going on in the town centre. It's brilliant to see it coming along, but I'd like to draw his attention to the investment prospectus from 2017, which at page 26 talks about the town centre, incorporating the bus centre and developing a cultural entertainment village, an innovation village, and I think that that's what's coming to fruition now. So it's really good that it's been taken on and carried forward, but it did start in 2017, as did some of the other things that were mentioned. In terms of exec reports, listening to the exec today, there is no agenda item for that, so I would disagree that that can come forward tonight. If you want to change it, then it should go through the proper procedure, and that goes through the Constitution and Members Development Committee, where the Constitution is discussed and then brought back. And I'll just draw you to the, I'm going to find it, there it is, the Executive Scheme of Delegation, which is the current Constitution, and point 4 on general responsibilities for executive members, that says to report to council on activities they have undertaken and to be held to account by councillors and the mayor. And we haven't had that for 4 months. It is also not incumbent on us. It's not our responsibility as individuals to seek out that information. Our information should be presented to us. And I would just like to remind the mayor that that is the current procedure, and that's what we should have had here tonight. I am probably, I think, looking around the room, the only person here who is a former executive member. And I can categorically say that when those reports were presented and when they were produced, they were done by the executive member with the full assistance of an officer. It was an officer who helped me bring all the information together at one point in a way that I could present it. If I was asked to present that report in a heartfelt way, I would have been able to do it because I knew exactly what was in my report and I was on top of my brief. And I am absolutely offended by the comments that have been made by the Mayor tonight. You do me down, and you do our officers down, and you do our departments down. Our departments do a fantastic job, and they have the right to be promoted in this chamber. So I am really angry at your comments. So I think I'll leave it there.
I think that's enough, Councillor Rowe here. Councillor, do you want to reply to anything? No, Councillor Mawson, you wish to speak, sir?
Thank you, Chair. Can I first mention the Rugby League World Cup? It's an important thing for the town. We're looking forward to it happening as a support of Rugby League and Rugby Union rather than football. Just wait for some attacks from somewhere. I'm looking forward to it. Dennis says they will come, no doubt. The fact is, it's a fantastic thing for the town, but one thing that the Captain Cook Birth Village Trust are hoping to do, and we were going to do it last year, is have some activities between children and players from the teams that come. So that's something we want to work with, and we hope we're not forgotten on that basis. Executive reports needed overhaul, without a doubt. One of your solutions was to email executive members with concerns with issues. I did that over a month ago to one of your executives. I've had no reply. Now, I know it went out because I sent it to all the councils, a thing I rarely do. Councillor Rathman reminded me that he didn't want to be included in the emails, so I know it has gone out. So there's a failure there immediately. The system won't work that you were offering. Equally, executive members being questioned in here, there are some questions that need asking that all members should hear the reply, and that's one thing that does come out of the executive report now. I think that I agree with Councillor Story. It's a thing that should be discussed. There's been no consultation. To have done it the way it is incorrect, and I'd like to see it done correctly. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, very briefly, thank you for that. I agree with most of what you said. I think, yeah, we do need to link up the Rugby League World Cup, and one of the teams, there are two teams going to play here. It's the Cook Islands versus Tonga, and the Cook Islands obviously get their name from our so there's a brilliant link, in case people didn't know, between the Rugby World Cup and Stuart Park and the Birthplace Museum. So there's a fantastic opportunity there. We need to capitalise on it, don't we? Just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that people should only email in. I wasn't suggesting that emailing in questions should replace exec member reports. What I'm saying is there are a variety of ways that people can gain information if they want to. But thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll do two more. Councillor Branson and then Councillor Higgins, and then we'll change tack.
Can you hear? Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments on the issue of the executive reports. Now, I'll be absolutely honest. Yes, the reports could be shorter. Yes, we can change things. That's certainly not a bad thing. However, we've got to remember what our basic function is here as a council, and that is to scrutinise the executive. And in order to do that, you have to have the necessary information. You have to have that information in advance. And that's what the purpose of the reports are. It really isn't good enough to say that you can phone people up and ask what's going on. Quite often, you don't have any idea what's going on, so you don't have the information on which to ask any questions in the first place. Yeah. You really need to have that information in advance. And it's certainly true that a lot of these reports tell us what's happened. That in itself is no bad thing. It might be a very good idea if it told us what is planned to happen in the future. That's not a bad idea either.
And I'm not opposed either to executive members answering questions about what has been happening. That's certainly a good idea. But we are certainly throwing the baby out with the bathwater if we get rid of the written executive reports in some format or another. They could be shorter, they could be more concise, all of those things are true, but unless we have them, we cannot do our job of scrutinising the executive, and that is what we are elected here to do. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree with much of what you said there. I think that some form of written report is required and useful and would benefit us all. And I think that's the plan. But what we're trying to work out is what is the format for that. And just to stress again for you, David, and everyone else, this isn't a plan that I cooked up or the Deputy Mayor cooked up. This was done in conversations with officers about how to do a better job of sharing information in a really constructive and appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Open and transparent, you are not. Since you came, if we don't get the Gazette, the Chair's right, or go on Gazette Live, we don't know what's happening. We can't ask questions. Councillor Branson's right, we can't ask questions if we don't know what's going on, because we don't know what the question will be. It's just ludicrous. We need, and you know, I know you had a big business, Mr. Mayor. This is not a business. This is a council with rules and regulations. Not something that you can decide, that's a good idea, I think I'll do that. There's rules and regulations that have to be adhered to. And it's about time you started doing it. And stop saying things that are not true. Councillor Rooney is quite right. Yes, officers did help the executive, but it was the executive telling the officers what they'd done or what they wanted to do, and they helped them to formulate. And then everybody got that before the meeting, and then anybody could ask questions on it. Now, you know, I don't want somebody to stand up and say, oh, I love my town, I do this, I do that. I want to know what's happening. So when I come, I can say, well, really, that's smashing, that's great. But what if, or what will you do? Just, you know, just get back to the rules and regulations. And it's not old-fashioned. It's the rules. So it's not your business, you're the mayor of this town, and you follow the rules like everybody else has to. Otherwise, you're going to be in big bother. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. A reply, Andy?
Yeah, thank you for that. Some interesting points there. It's really important that we all follow the rules, isn't it? And of course, there's the letter of the rules, which we categorically have to follow, myself and Patricia, Councillor Higgins, and everybody else. There's also the spirit of the rules. And you know what we get going on in this place, at the expense of the public, is betraying the spirit of the rules and using the rules and playing the system for political gain. And that's what me and other people want to stop. We want to facilitate transparency. By the way, Councillor Higgins, I do try to be transparent. If I fail sometimes, then I'm sorry. But you have never emailed me and asked a question when I haven't got back. You've never called me. You never asked for a meeting and I've declined it. I make myself accessible to you and within reason, every member of the public, within reason. And maybe I don't always get it right, but I will keep trying. I will stick to the letter of rules. And importantly, and some people should learn from this, I will stick to the spirit of the rules as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. We'll move on from this because I think we've all exhausted it really. I think we're all of the same. Most of us are the same impression that if it has to be changed, it has to be changed. But we need to know what it's going to be changed into, and we all want to be agreeing as to what we're changing. Where at the moment we seem to be confused with that. So This afternoon, the Mayor asked me if we could have 2 executives that could speak for a while, and we could ask them questions. In openness and fairness of my mind, I was thinking that's fair enough. Because people have complained long enough we haven't had executives to speak to. We've got 2 sitting on the plate here tonight. So if we give them a normal time of 5 minutes, then we can ask them a couple of questions and then move on to another situation. So do you want to present 2 independent people who are doing it?
Excuse me, Chair.
Sorry.
Excuse me, Chair. There is no agenda item for this. We have not been given forewarning of who's speaking, and we have no preparation here. I would strongly object to this happening tonight.
Yeah. I think we just have to let it go. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll let it go. We'll move on to the next item, which is everybody's favourite report from the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just mentioning to I'd just like the Council to note the report. I'm obviously open to any questions about this. Can I just say about the Overscrew report? The Overscrew group, the Overscrew and group. We invite the Chair, the Executive, different the environment, children's services, and they all give a very impressive details of their portfolio. The next meeting will be Councillor Mason and Councillor Grange to explain what their portfolios exist. Okay, we're open to the overview of school report. Can I maybe suggest that somewhere in the plans of these executive reports, it should be like that? Okay, I totally agree with what Councillor Branson has said about the report should be short. We do need reports and questions asked, just not by overview of school report and inform members. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody got any questions for Councillor Saunders? No? Okay. Next item is urgent items. There weren't any. Members' question time. We've got 1, 2, 3. We had 4. We've used 1 up because Councillor Udin has asked this question. So we'll go through the Councillor's questions. The first one was from Councillor Branson, and it was to the Mayor. 2 minutes, Councillor Branson, and 3 minutes for the Mayor to respond.
Thank you, Judge. Yes, I'll just make it short and sweet and read the question as it's written down here. Given the imminent ending of government financial support for bus services, and the recent remarks of Stephen Walker of Stagecoach in the Evening Gazette in respect of the need for replacement financial support from the local authorities, what action is the Mayor proposing to take to prevent a substantial reduction in the already limited bus network in the region, which would leave many people in Teesside being unable to access work opportunities in the near future? Thank you.
Really good question, and it's something that is absolutely not my area of expertise. I'm passionate about getting more buses. In case people don't know, one of the challenges that we have is that we have very few bus users. So the buses companies try and recoup some money from the low passengers by pushing the fares right up, which deters people from using the buses. So we've got a really awful situation here. Terrible service, not enough. You may or may not be aware that we've got people in parts of Middlesbrough who really want to work, and it would benefit them, their pocket, their family's welfare and their mental health if they got a job. And there are jobs going begging, but they can't get there. So I worked with the Combined Authority, Ben Houchin, and we managed to get on a flex bus service. But that's only a a simple little thing that will make a difference but won't solve Teesside's bus problems. I sought advice on your question because I don't really know how to answer that, and we need to come up with a plan, and I don't have one right now. But I've spoken to our in-house people, and I'm going to read out their reply for now, and I'm happy to keep engaging with you on this. Is that Middlesbrough Council recently approved the decision to formally sign up to the region's imminent bus service improvement plan. This will cover a number of key themes such as improvements to infrastructure, punctuality and ticketing offers for young people. It's envisaged that along with this plan and our own funding, there will be local schemes to focus on issues that will improve bus journeys and make them a more viable alternative for people. And our strategies have sustainable modes of transport at their heart, and we will keep pursuing those. So those are the words of an in-house expert and officer. They're not mine. I'm keen to learn more. It's a really important matter, and I'm very happy to keep engaging and keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My second question was from Councillor Furness. You've got two questions, Councillor Furness. Just do them one at a time and you get two separate answers. Councillor Furness, and his question was to Councillor Balamo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
2 minutes, Councillor.
I'll read the question first. The town sector could see the ongoing trend of declining footfall and trade. Given the current economic climate of high inflation, from the higher energy costs and the squeezing of people's disposable incomes, we'll see overheads increase while incomes shrink. Considering the council has taken the strategy of buying 2 large shopping areas, so we're now the landlords of 2 of the biggest shopping areas in Middlesbrough. What is the strategy and how can the council react in this current economic climate if we see delinquencies on rent, shrinking trade? What is the council strategy towards this? It's directed towards our plan, or council plan, sorry. And but if the mayor wants to answer as well, he can.
Councillor Fernando.
Thank you, Councillor. It's on 1, 2, yes. Thank you, Councillor Furness. Yes, I have a response to your question regarding the purchase of the 2 buildings and the footfall in the town. We are obviously trying to change the offer in the town centre and move away from being so reliant on retail. As things become more expensive, the existing retailers will find life harder, and we will do what we can to help them. We have expert commercial asset managers in place called Praxis. They are a company for both centres, and they are experienced at managing through difficult times. Our financial projections for the centres have not been built on best case scenarios, so we do have some ability to withstand any shocks, but naturally we hope to retain as much of the current offer as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Furness, you have another question for Councillor Polano?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Landlord licensing. This scheme has worked and continues to work in the form to be, and the rollout into Newport has been a success. Can we see it extended further into wards like mine, Park Ward, which is on the cusp of Newport? How many properties are still under licence in each of these wards, and is that scheme is operating? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Furness. Again, the question is in 2 parts. It's 2 questions, but no matter. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, but it's a fairly long jargon. There are certain legal criteria which have to be met to designate an area for selective licensing. They include a high proportion of property in the private rented sector, low housing demand, significant and persistent problems caused by antisocial behaviour, poor property conditions. In relation to future rollout, we are currently preparing a proposal document for Newport 2 area, which will be reported to Executive for their approval prior to a consultation. After this scheme is implemented, we are planning to review areas for potential future schemes based on the legal criteria. In the Thornsbury, there are 894 licensable properties. To date, 606 properties have applied for their licence. In Newport 1, there are 1,166 licensable properties. To date, 1,158 properties have applied for their licence. Work is still ongoing in both areas to licence the properties. Legal action can be taken if the property owner does not apply for a licence, although this has only been necessary in a small number of cases.
Does Park Board apply to those qualifications, or?
Later, at a later date when it's been discussed, when the next one has been discussed by executive, then Park Board could be looked at.
Right, thank you.
Depends on the legal criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. Carry on to the next item, which is notice of motions. We have one. Councillor Matthew Story. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Story?
I'll just read it out, Chair. Yeah, so the motion is Middlesbrough Council recognises and sends its congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen on reaching 70 years on the throne. The Platinum Jubilee is an opportunity for people to pay tribute and thank the Queen for leading Britain. In her 70 years as monarch, she has been a calming and reassuring presence to the people of the United Kingdom and Commonwealth. It is also an opportunity for people to reflect on the changes that have occurred during her long reign. This council therefore takes this opportunity to recognise her longevity and hard work on behalf of the country in her time as sovereign.
Thank you, Councillor. You do have a second for this? Councillor Dean, do you wish to speak on it, or do you wish to speak probably later on? Or?
Yeah.
So you speak later on, okay? So we don't have any motion is now to be debated. Anybody got anything to say about it? I can't see any hands up anywhere. Nobody. Councillor Finesse.
I'd just like to say that the initiative of the grants scheme has been really good. I've had quite a few people from my ward apply, and I think they've been successful. So I think, you know, it'll be a good celebration for the town, and, you know, we could make a good thing of it, because it's going to be a long weekend. But I think what the council have done with the grant has been really good. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anybody else want to say anything? Still looking at hands. Councillor Arundel.
I think I want to go.
Okay, just shout out.
Yeah. Myself, along with a couple of other councillors here present, have sworn allegiance to the Queen. Are you listening, yeah? No, I'd like to support this, you know, wholeheartedly.
Just down the road, without a microphone, it won't be recorded, so just hold on.
I'd like to start from the beginning.
Yes, from the beginning, of course. You're on for still to go.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Myself and several other members here, who are ex-service people, have sworn allegiance to the Queen. Okay. And I think this is a well-meant and deserved proposal, to be put forward to the council. She's been a wonderful asset to the country, and we should all be very proud of what she's done. So I'd like to support this motion. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on it? I can't see any hands. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Smart at the end.
Yeah, just to say, I think the Queen's service to this country has been absolutely extraordinary. I totally agree that our grant scheme has been fantastic. We're going to have loads going on in Nunthorpe, for example. And I want to wholeheartedly support this motion.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No, can't see anyone else. Councillor Dean, do you wish to go in now and speak on it?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Story and other councillors have said all this really. You know, we think she's done
Using the mic. Oh, sorry.
over 70 years, and I've secured funding for these parties from the Community Council, and there's been lots of interest as well as funding from the council. So hopefully around my ward we're going to have lots of parties and celebrate this wonderful weekend that we're all going to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? That's anybody. Councillor Story, do you wish to come and add something to it?
Yeah, I just thought, I've got a note here about the times the Queen's visited Middlesbrough. It just might be useful. I mean, some people might not know. I must admit, I didn't know until I looked into it, but the Queen's visited Middlesbrough 3 times in a 70-year reign, and most recently was in Teesside during a Diamond Jubilee in 2012. In 1956, she visited Middlesbrough Town Hall. In 1977, the Queen visited Tees Dock and Prisic Base during the Silver Jubilee, and in 1993, the Queen opened Pallister Park alongside Councillor Mike Carr, the leader of Middlesbrough Council. So she's had links to our town in the past, and I think everyone said everything about the grant schemes. I think it's fantastic that we've provided that support to local people, and especially with COVID and all the stuff going on in the world at the minute, it is nice to be able to celebrate something and to be able to have a bit of a blowout and enjoy ourselves and celebrate the fact that she's been on the throne that long. I think to imagine all of the change that she's seen in this country from the time she was coronated to now, the way this country has changed over time, it's epic, and for all the different prime ministers she's ever dealt with, it must be such a fascinating job for her to have to do, and the change that she's seen. So I just think it's really good to mark it, and I'm really pleased everyone's behind the motion, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we'll go to the vote.
Can I see a show of hands for those against the motion, please? Nobody against? Any abstentions? No, the motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item is notice of urgent motions. No, why not? After that, we're followed by the council diary report. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. This report proposes a diary of meetings for the municipal year, which will run from the annual general meeting in May this year until the annual general meeting in May next year. The dates are tentative at this stage. They're flexible to change as and when required. The purpose of seeking council approval of the dates at this stage now is to promote good governance and ensuring that meetings happen in line with the requirements of the council's constitution. This report requires a decision, so can I have a show of hands, please, for anybody against? Sorry, I haven't given an opportunity for debate.
Anybody want any comments?
Yeah, very, very brief, and I've no problem with the report at all, but I would like it if we could consider, and this is something that's affected myself and Councillor, the other Councillor Story, if we could make sure that half-term holidays are taken into account. Some members do have childcare responsibilities, and it is important that we make sure that we can attend meetings as easily as possible. And we did miss a full council meeting because we arranged to go away during a half-term. So if we can have reference to half-terms and school holidays, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Cook?
I would just like it to be sort of referenced that 30% of the meetings actually take place during like school kiki-outy time, and if we are wanting to sort of attract younger councillors, wanting to attract a sort of a wider range of people, we shouldn't just have like sort of meetings when we assume no one works or no one has any other commitments. I obviously understand that that's not always available, but it would just be nice if we considered that from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? No? Right. Sorry, Councillor Rathbone.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Question for the monitoring officer. It's just regarding full council dates, and obviously keeping everything constitutionally tight, which has been a concern of many. Will it impact, do you think we'll actually be able to sort out how the new executive role is going to be processed and everything with regards to the reports before the first meeting on the calendar? I'm just wondering if it's time for the Constitution Committee to facilitate any changes and discuss it to bring back to Council. Otherwise, we could still be sat here next November without any reports. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. As I understand it, the Mayor has a plan to bring a new executive scheme of delegation to the annual general meeting with a proposal as to how the executive member reports will be presented to council meetings in the future. So the Mayor might want to confirm that position.
We'll get that in writing.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
I thought Thank you. I thought you said that the Mayor was going to bring some new changes forward potentially for the next meeting, and I said we'll get that in writing in advance.
You get that as a report, as a proposed change to the executive scheme of delegation.
Reports, yes, yes. That we haven't had them. We've heard all this debate tonight. tonight. I think I've got some burning issues I want to discuss with different executive members. There's been no opportunity for that. I've prepared questions. I'm prepared to help any executive members that can't manage to write reports. I can give suggestions. I can help in structure and information. So please let's have anything written down in advance of anything that we're meant to scrutinise and consider. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have a show of hands, please, for those not in favour of approving the report in the council diary? Any abstentions? The report is approved, thank you.
Right, next item is number 13 on the list. Council committee vacancies. On to you again, Charlotte.
As usual then, councillors and mayor, there will be a number of vacancies that we'll need to go through. So the first one is the Adult Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel. There is one vacancy which is open to all councillors. Are there any nominations? No nominations? That vacancy remains, thank you. Next one is the Children and Young People's Learning Scrutiny Panel. There is one vacancy which is open to all councillors. There's one nomination so far, Councillor Chris Hobson. Any further nominations, please? No, that place goes to Councillor Chris Hobson. The Durham, Darlington, Teesside, Hambleton, Richmondshire and Whitby STP Joint Overview Scrutiny Committee. There is one vacancy open to all councillors and one nomination so far, Councillor John Hobson. Any further nominations? No, okay, that goes to John Hobson, Councillor John Hobson, sorry. The Economic Development, Environment and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, again one vacancy which is open to all councillors. So far one nomination for Councillor John Hobson. Any further? No, that goes to Councillor John Hobson. Health Scrutiny Panel, one vacancy which is open to all councillors, and so far there's one nomination for Councillor Mick Saunders. Are there any further nominations? No further nominations, so that goes to Councillor Mick Saunders. The Chair of Health Scrutiny Panel, again one vacancy which is open to all members of the Health Scrutiny Panel. And so far we have one nomination for Councillor Davison. Are there any further nominations? Councillor Higgins nominates Councillor Halawi. Any further? Okay, we need a show of hands then for each councillor in turn. So for those in favour of Councillor Davison, please. Thank you. And those in favour of Councillor Halawi? Thank you. That place goes to Councillor Davison. Thanks. And the South Tees Health Scrutiny Committee, which is open to all councillors, and one nomination so far is for Councillor Dodds. Any further nominations? No, so that place goes to Councillor Dodds. Tees Valley Health Scrutiny Committee. And there is one vacancy open to all councillors. Are there any nominations? None so far. Councillor O'Doon?
Self-nomination, sorry.
You nominate yourself? Okay. Any further nominations? Okay, that place goes to Councillor O'Doon. The Overview Scrutiny Board. It's the Overview Scrutiny Board, one vacancy up to all councillors.
Proposed Councillor Brian Wood.
Proposed Councillor Brian Wood. Any further? You self-nominate Councillor Cook? Yeah. Okay. Any further? No. So we'll take a show of hands first for Councillor Hubbard, please. Thank you. And those in favour of Councillor Cook? That place goes to Councillor Hubbard. Thank you. Parenting Board, one vacancy, and that's initially open to the MIG group, and we have one nomination so far from Councillor Dodds. Are there any further nominations? No, that place goes to Councillor Dodds, thank you. The Vice Chair of Corporate Parenting Board. Now, this vacancy is open to all current members of Corporate Parenting Board, and there's one current nomination, which is for Councillor Davidson. Any additional nominations? That place goes to Councillor Davidson. Last one, Planning and Development Committee, and there's one vacancy open to mid-group councillors initially. There's one nomination, again for Councillor Davidson. Any further nominations? Okay, that place goes to Councillor Davidson, thank you.
Right, that concludes the business for tonight. Thank you for everybody for attending. We'll see you all at the next meeting. I'll be around. Thank you and good night.
25 minutes, but it's all recorded.